It's preparing. We're live.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome everyone, commissioners, guests, those joining us on YouTube to the September meeting of our LGBTQ State Commission. I'm Marcia Batson, I'm a co-chair, and we begin beyond our welcome with a roll call of commissioners present. And today we have a new commissioner, Commissioner Dustin Best, and we will allow them a little extra time to introduce themselves. But during our welcome, we always say a few words about ourselves, introduce ourselves as we go through the roll call and bring ourselves to the point of call to order. So staff, if you would, bring us through the roll call, please. And I believe there might actually be another question for us to consider as we go through this. We are in call to order.
All right, let's see here. Commissioner Landers.
Present.
Commissioner Maroon.
Present.
Commissioner Robinson.
Present.
Commissioner Ross is excused. Commissioner Sawyer. Okay. Commissioner Archer.
Present.
Commissioner KB.
Present.
Commissioner Figueroa.
Present.
Commissioner Erickson.
Present.
Commissioner Frederickson Goldson. Commissioner Hillmeyer.
Present.
Commissioner Vienna. Commissioner Botzer.
Present.
And Commissioner Best.
All right, thank you. We have a quorum, we can go forward. And now let me call on our Executive Director to offer the land acknowledgement, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Santiago here, he, they, or she pronouns, and I will read our land acknowledgement, which we have been using regularly, recognizing that I am not of indigenous descent, or that I do not claim indigenous descent, but recognizing also that the Commission wants to acknowledge the lands in which we live and the lands in which we conduct our work. So here is our land acknowledgement. The Washington State LGBTQ Commission recognizes that we live and work in stolen lands. These lands, water, mountains, skies, and everything within them have been inhabited since time immemorial by the descendants of the 29 federally recognized tribes, as well as the many not recognized tribal communities in the state of Washington. The members of the Commission come from occupied lands from all of these 29 federally recognized and the non-recognized tribal communities in Washington. We recognize the history of colonization, genocide, subjugation, and enslavement experienced by indigenous peoples in these lands and throughout the continent. It is our commitment as a state agency to recognize tribal sovereignty, to work alongside tribal partners for the well-being of our communities, to celebrate the achievements of the many indigenous communities among us, and to dismantle the ongoing legacy of settled colonialism, as well as the exclusion and erasure of indigenous peoples that continues today. May it be so.
Thank you. At this point, we want to note that we have 4 legislative advisors. They are Senator Claire Wilson from the 30th District, State Representative Nicole Mackley from the 43rd District, and State Representative Skylar Rood on the 16th District. And we want to welcome those who are present. I see that Senator Wilson is with us. Thank you. And later in the meeting, they will have a few moments to speak to us on issues they wish to convey to us. At this point, we always give a moment for housekeeping issues. So staff, if you could let us know any housekeeping issues, process issues that we need to know at this point.
Thank you, Marcia. Let me see here. And so just a few notes for the meeting. As Manny mentioned, we are live on YouTube and the meeting is being recorded. For information, so my name is Omar Santana. I am the project manager for the commission, also doing a lot of the administrative background work for the meeting. So if you have any connection issues, as we kind of started off with a little bit, please let me know via chat and I'll be able to assist you with that. And so also being a public meeting and we are virtual, there are some healthy and safe interaction guidelines that we like to follow. And so in order to foster a safe and healthy interaction, if there's any disruptive behavior, participants who are causing the disruption will be notified by commission staff about the behavior. If they refuse to comply with health interactions guidelines, they will be removed from the meeting. Healthy and safe interaction includes assuming positive intent on the part of the commissioners, other participants, and staff. Do not use transphobic, homo, lesbo, biphobic language, misogynistic, xenophobic, racist, anti-Black, ableist, ageist, or foul language during your interactions. Partisan political comments are not allowed in this context. Focus your comments on commission and agenda items. Name calling and insults are not allowed. And with that, again, here for any administrative or background support, please let me know if you have any issues. I return it to you, Commissioner Botzer.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Now, commissioners, let us look to the minutes of our last meeting, our May meeting, that we have received, and we would accept a motion to approve. And if there are any corrections or additions, please speak about those now.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the meeting minutes as presented to us.
I do have one change, which is a very small little change, which is to say that I represent the county of Walla Walla, not the county of Walla Wall.
Oh my goodness. All right, we shall make that change.
Thanks.
And accept the motion to approve. Is there a second for that motion?
I will second.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, we'll need a roll call vote to approve the minutes. Staff, please.
Commissioner Landers,
Aye.
Commissioner Maroon,
Aye.
Commissioner Robinson,
Aye.
Commissioner Archer,
Abstain, just because I haven't looked over them fully.
Commissioner Figueroa,
Aye.
Commissioner Erickson,
Aye.
Commissioner Hillmeyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Botzer.
Aye. All right, thank you. Well, next we will run through our various committees. We have several committees here at this commission, and ask if there are any reports. And the way that we do our work, some committees will have reports, some will not at each meeting. So we'll do that now, and we'll start with the executive director and staff report.
I was trying to unmute here while also reading an email from Commissioner Golson, who had a family emergency and couldn't come. So if we can reflect on the minutes that Commissioner Golson is absent. Omar, just making that clarification for our minutes. So good morning again. Thank you so much for taking the time today. I know that we had a little bit of trouble trying to figure out how to conduct business during the summer when so many people were going to be taking time, very needed time for personal rest and restoration and all that. So thank you so much, both for taking care of yourselves and for accommodating the needs of the commission as a whole, to find a new date and going with the decision of the executive committee to cancel the previous meeting and to move the meeting to today, which usually we have these meetings on Saturday. So we continue facing the challenges of COVID and the development of that. So today we were hoping to have a full day meeting in person where we could do a lot of not only reconnect with each other, but also do a lot of work on strategic planning. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and we're trying to figure out the best way of conducting that strategic planning work. So today we will take some time to go over some preliminary questions to think about that. And all that is part of my report, by the way. I just wanted to make sure that we had all that framework for the work that we're going to be doing today and in the next couple of months. I wanted to highlight a couple of other things from my report to the commission. One thing that I didn't include in the report that I would like to share with you is my meeting with both with the office of the state office in Washington, D.C., where we had some conversations about some federal legislation that affects somehow the LGBTQ community, including the Equality Act, and how to be engaged in those processes and that educational part that we need to do. And in addition to that, we also had a meeting with, I had a meeting with Congresswoman Jayapal, where we discussed how we can continue partnering with the Washington delegation in Congress to advance the Equality Act along with other work. One of the wonderful works that Congresswoman Jayapal is doing is around trans and non-binary people in the United States. So, excuse me, we have some plans on engage with her office and part of the congressional delegation on offering support to the work that they are doing at the federal level. And that's really exciting. And I forgot to include it on my report, but hopefully I will edit that since it's still a draft. So I can include that. A couple of other things is that we have been working on, well, the one thing that I wanted to, now that you are here, share with you is Omar's transition to the Department of Health. I am really excited for him as a colleague, and I am really sad to see him go, especially because, as you know, we were the staff team on our side as a team that started this, and we had no idea what we were doing. So I'm really grateful that I had a colleague, putting together the work of the commission like him. So thank you, Omar. Gracias. For all the work, and we will celebrate him. So, and look at all the hearts and the clapping and the celebration. I hope that you feel all that love, and we'll take time to celebrate you throughout the rest of the year. His last day will be the last day of September, which is the 30th, I believe, right? And we have appointed Tracy Carlos, who comes from LNI and is very active with RAIN, the LGBTQ business resource group, and she was in charge of communications there. So great news for our newsletter on our site and the website and all that. But also Tracy has been very involved in LGBTQ legislation and the movement, excuse me, and knows the systems internally very well in government. So I have all confidence that she's going to do a fantastic job as a program manager for the commission. And they are going to be, Tracy starts on the 27th with the intention of having some overlap with Omar, so we don't leave any of the projects that we're working on hanging, right, in that transition. Speaking of the projects and why it was so important for me that there was some overlap between Omar and Tracy. Some of the projects that we're engaged in, one of the biggest ones is the HIV medication access work group that was established by the legislature on a proviso in the budget, and that work as the commission, the LGBTQ commission, to gather a group of stakeholders, including the DOH, the HCA, community groups that are doing work with people living with HIV, as well as survivors of HIV and other stakeholders like pharmacists and healthcare providers and social workers and all the community that works with people living with HIV, to address some concerns about access to medications through the Medicaid program in the state of Washington. It's been a lot of work and really rewarding to be able to work with this community and these stakeholders. We do have a designated page within our website with all the information, all the recordings of the meetings. You are more than welcome to peruse all that information. You are more than welcome to participate of the public meetings of the work group. The next event related to that work is the first of a couple of town halls that we're going to be hosting to hear directly from stakeholders, not only people living with HIV, but also physicians and people doing work with the community. And the next is, well, the first one is going to be this Monday from 5:30 to 7. The information and the notice, the public notice is on our website. You are more than welcome to distribute that amongst your networks, and also recognize that this is not the only town hall. So if someone cannot make it this time, they can make it to the next one, or they can participate of the work group meetings, or they can just send us their comments and their recommendations and their ideas and their concerns. So it is the work of the public. The other project that we're working on is 3 pieces. Well, I'm not going to say pieces of legislation because it's still not legislation, but 3 areas that we're working with the policy office. One is around infertility treatments and whether or not it's possible for Washington to have a mandate for healthcare, for health plans in Washington to provide infertility treatments to Washingtonians in general. There is a disproportionate number of LGBTQ families that have challenges accessing those sort of services because of the price tag. And right now we're working, trying to identify the best way to move forward with this. There was a sunrise review. This is the process by which the legislature asks a state agency to look into the possibility of having a certain legislative movement on a specific issue. So there was a sunrise review. The review, I was part of the process, and by submitting some our perspective as a commission on why it was important for the community, including some statistics on family planning and family composition of LGBTQ families. And the report, thankfully, the report actually recommends including infertility treatments as a mandate. Now it's up to everybody else to figure out whether it's possible fiscally for the state to fund it, and whether, you know, the details of that. With that said, I want to make sure that you knew about this because it's going to be one of the biggest pieces of legislation if it happens. And there are different ways in which we can address that. One is legislation directly, a bill. And another thing that we are trying to figure out if it's better is a study group that will study the issue and then put forth a full recommendation to a legislation in 2023. The other thing that we're doing in legislatively is decriminalization of sex work. Right now, we have the support of the policy office to move forward with studying the issue and engaging the community. That's going to be the part that we play. And there's the possibility of the commission putting forth a recommendation to set up also a study group on how to address these, so it actually takes into consideration the needs of sex workers and other stakeholders, like people who have been victims of sex trafficking, people who have been victims of domestic violence, and all the players that we need to engage in order to have the best the process of decriminalization of sex work in Washington. We're working with that. So soon, the Vulnerable Communities Committee and other stakeholders are going to get a message from me asking for meetings with community members, because right now, in order to move forward with that idea, we need the input from the community that is doing the work. So that's there. And then the final thing that is going to come for legislation somehow is protections for trans and non-binary people in prisons, and how to address that concern. We have been in conversations, in lots of conversations, with the DOC, the Department of Corrections, with the Office of the Correction Ombuds, and Disability Rights Washington, which is the community group that is mobilizing for these to protect the trans identity of trans and non-binary folk in prisons. So we do have some ideas. I cannot offer some details about that right now because it's still in the draft stage, and we are working with Disability Rights Washington. We are following their lead, and then serving as mediators in some of the conversations with the different stakeholders. So, but I can tell you that there's good movement there, and there's the intention on every side, including the Department of Corrections, to make sure that we do protect that information, especially given some of the movement that is happening. A couple of other things. I will be meeting next week with Matt to go over some of the plans to engage the community and the Office of Women and Minority Business Enterprises on how to advance the certification process for LGBTQ-owned businesses in Washington. We do have already some people from different jurisdictions, thanks Toby for doing this, where some jurisdictions are asking the office and other certification offices, where are these businesses, because we want to do business with them, and finding nothing. So we already have some good, justification for continuing doing this work of certification. So super happy for that. And then, as you know, this is long because, the whole summer without catching up, but we did the flag raising on the Capitol campus with the health recommendations that we had to follow at the time. The governor was there, Angaya Tupu, our co-chair, Angaya Tupu Viena was one of the speakers, and Josette Ross, Commissioner Josette Ross was the person who did the Land Acknowledgement, and we had Ryan Douglas from RAIN, the co-chair from RAIN, also saying a few words, as well as obviously the governor. And he also signed the ceremonial proclamation for LGBTQ Pride Month. So a lot of things happen, and tonight I'm on my way to Yakima for their Pride event tomorrow, representing not only the office, but also the Office of the Governor. And I had the opportunity to represent the governor at the Pride event for Somos Seattle, which is one of the Latinx groups that exist in Washington for LGBTQ, Latino, Latina, and Latinx folk, like myself. So a lot of movement this month. It's been, I have to share with you, it's been really, really, really busy, in spite of not being, out there for Pride and things like that we were hoping to be, going around the state for Pride. However, I think that we have done a lot of progress in many respects with many of the issues that are important to us. So I look forward to continue working, and feel free to reach out to me. We've been taking some or working with some local communities in schools, in healthcare, in government, some situations that have arisen in different parts of the state. So we try to find, the best resource for those people who are either experiencing discrimination or have been experiencing some sort of harassment or things like that. And we continue working with those and making sure that they have the support that they need. And in terms of legislation, I already shared with you some of those movements, and then some of the work internally with, Jamie Hollins is actually here from the exchange, but also working with the interagency sex and gender work group that is looking at the systems and how to best gather data from sexual diversity and gender expression. An interagency effort on how we make sure that everybody has the same information and collects the same information in the same way and things like that. So a lot of work, really happy. And then just so you'll know, my birthday is next weekend, so I'm going to be taking a few days off, but Omar is going to be there, and on the 27th, Trace is going to be there too. So thank you so much for your support, and I am open for questions or clarifications or ideas on how to continue doing this work. Jeffrey.
One thing that was absent from the report that I think you deserve some honest praise for is how you handled the Capitol Hill Pride issue. As a commissioner, it made me very proud to have an executive director that could acknowledge why it was wrong, the way that certain people handled that, and the unfair scrutiny that the marginalized community that was hosting the event received. And so to see my executive director be out loud and proud and defending the rights of marginalized communities to hold their events and create safe spaces to talk about the issues that matter most to that community was something that made me pretty damn proud to be on this commission. I really cannot say enough nice words to you about how you handled that. I really, Manny, that is something to be proud of. The other thing I'd like to say is, as someone who one day hopes to have children and may have fertility issues myself, I am very excited that that is actually something that is being tackled. I know a lot of couples that are LGBTQ that have been told they can't have children. And the idea that they would get some kind of coverage, that they would have an opportunity to have children, especially if they are in quote unquote non-traditional relationships. I prefer the term relationships, and just to leave it at that. The idea that we might be able to get some coverage for people that want to have children and want to go through the process of doing that and build a loving home is absolutely wonderful. So I just wanted to say thank you for both of those things, and I hope you give yourself a round of applause for representing the values of our commission on both counts. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey, Commissioner Robinson. So for those of you who are not necessarily familiar with what happened, there are several, obviously, Pride events in the Seattle area. One of them invited the Office of the Governor, and they reached out to me to be the representative. At that event, unfortunately, some things happened with the organizers that were not the best way to handle the diverse group of Pride events that were happening simultaneously, and that would have caused some confusion on what the values of the commission were. So we are not dismissing the different Pride events. We never sponsor a Pride event. We are present when we are requested to be present to engage with the community. And if the event reflects the values of the commission, we are there. But we are not putting our stamp on any Pride event of any kind. At times when we receive the invitation, we have to go through the process of whether or not is the appropriate place for us to be present as a state agency. If I go on behalf of the governor's office then and representing the governor, then there's that extra layer of making sure that the community knows where the governor stands and where his agenda is of inclusivity. So that's part of what happened. The event that had requested our presence didn't necessarily align with the values of the commission, and certainly not with the values of the governor and his administration. So we made the decision not to be there, and we sent the letter on why and the reasons, and let them know that we were not going to be present. That is not a dismissal of the event. The event happened, and they celebrated the community. We just didn't feel like it was the right place for the commission to be represented officially. And certainly when discussing the issue with the governor's office, it was also their understanding that it wasn't going to be the best place for the governor's presence to be. So yeah. Any other question or comments or concerns? And Madam Co-Chair, I understand that Commissioner Best is here. I don't know if you want to take a second to recognize and welcome. And yeah,
we certainly do. Thank you, though, our Executive Director, for that great report, and happy birthday, my goodness. All right. Yes, if the commissioners will allow, let us take just a moment and welcome our brand new commissioner, Dustin Best, to join us and say a few words. We'll give a little extra time to allow them to introduce themselves and say a few words, and we can say hello ourselves. So I don't see, oh yes, there you are. Welcome, Dustin, welcome. And please take the floor and introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about all your activities.
Hi, thank you, co-chair. My name is Dustin Best. Sorry I'm a little bit late. My internet wasn't working, so I had to reboot everything. So I felt bad my first meeting coming in late. I'm excited to join the commission. And I live in Omak, Washington. So I'm like in the North Central Washington area. So I'm kind of in the rural area. I'm probably about 2 hours north of Wenatchee, if anybody kind of knows where that area is. But my job before, I retired as the chief of police for the Colville tribe, and I'm a member of the Colville tribe. And I lived in this area most of my life. And I worked with a lot of LGBTQ community members while I was here, and some officers in this area that were LGBTQ. But doing law enforcement for over 20 years, I retired as that, and then I ran for a political office for a reservation. I became elected in tribal council about a year ago. So that's new to me too, and I'm learning that. But then I had the opportunity to join the commission, and I applied, and I was excited to get it and to represent everyone over, a whole bunch of people over in this area. So, but I just wanted to keep it short, but I hope to meet all of you guys and work with you guys and learn from all of you. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Best. And does anyone have a word of welcome they'd like to offer before we move on? Yes, please, Commissioner Archer.
I was just going to say hi and welcome and thanks for joining us. It's really exciting to have someone from that part of Washington representing. I'm south of you in the Spokane area, so thanks for being here, and looking forward to getting to know you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, let's move on. We're doing the reports from committees, or those committees that have reports. Next one is Executive Committee. I'll offer a quick report there. We met on our usual times to discuss process and prepare for next meeting, but we also had a couple of extra meetings looking at COVID, looking at Delta, and making that decision about the last meeting. And then a meeting again, an extra meeting to prepare for this one. So the Executive Committee has been busy and doing its job. And you will see that filtered throughout the rest of the meeting as well. All right, the next up, if there is a report from the Economic and Business Development Committee, we welcome it now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So on behalf of the Economic Development Committee, submitted the report. We don't have any motions or action for the commission today. However, the biggest thing is, as Manny has shared, we are preparing for the community meetings around the state, around LGBTQ business certification, what that could look like, hearing from business owners, from entrepreneurs, from other stakeholder groups. And as Manny has said, there's a number of government agencies who are very interested as well. The issues around the Delta variant of COVID put those plans on hold a little bit, delayed them. We are moving forward. We had hoped to have regional in-person meetings. Of course, that has changed now. We will go back to the virtual settings. But I think we are looking in perhaps late October to have the first one. So we are very excited about that. If you all know any small business owners, entrepreneurs who would be interested in this, please do let us know so that we can get them the invitation for the events, because we would love to hear from them and what they would like to see in any potential action. So that is the extent of my report. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Our next one up is communications and outreach, if you have a report.
Commissioner Archer has a question.
I was
Yes,
just about
please.
to say that.
Thanks. Well, let me ask real quick, is it all right for us to ask questions
Of
of
course.
the work groups? Okay, great. I was wondering, Matt, you mentioned that there was a fair amount of meetings with stakeholders and whatnot around this issue, and I wondered if you'd be able to share some of the more specific insights. Sorry, I just called you Matt, Commissioner Landers. If you could share some of the insights that you got from some of those stakeholder meetings.
The stakeholder meetings have actually not occurred yet. They were delayed. They were supposed to. They've been delayed. The first one will be in later October, and that's when I'm having a call with Manny next week to figure out the best time for those. So we are looking to gather that information, and we will for sure pass that along to the commission once they've happened.
Awesome, thank you.
We have received some communications from different different stakeholders. For instance, what I mentioned, the city of Olympia was collecting names of LGBTQ businesses that they could contract with, and they didn't find anything in the state database. So they reached out to Commissioner Hillmeyer, and we have, you know, their concern of not having something like that where they can clearly identify LGBTQ-owned businesses, which is a way that we can make the argument for the need of certification. So things like that are happening. We haven't had the chance to actually collect a group of people to share those, you know, instances with us at a broader, you know, level. But things like that are happening already because people are more aware of, you know, of things like how to do business with LGBTQ-owned businesses and things like that, beyond the work that agencies like the GSBA and Inland Northwest Chambers do.
Thank you.
And it's always appropriate to ask questions for our groups and our work and our committee. So please, you know, if you have a question, just say so, wave your hand, whatever it takes to make sure that we get to you and get that question. Okay, so
I believe, Madam Chair, that you had asked the Communications Committee to issue a report. Am I correct in my understanding of that?
Absolutely correct indeed. That is next.
First of all, I would like to apologize to my fellow committee members on that committee. I was not able to hold the meeting last week that I would normally have. A personal emergency that I do not wish to elaborate upon occurred that prevented me from being able to. I do try very hard to be everywhere I can. Sometimes I'm not able to make it. Beyond that, if you need more information, you are welcome to contact me privately and off the grid. These are the things that the Communications Committee is going to be doing. This is what our focus is going to be for the remainder of the 2021 calendar year. First and foremost, we will be electing a new chair. I have done it for a term. Ideally, I would like to offer someone else the opportunity to volunteer on this commission. I do not believe that a chair should hold office forever, and there's too many talented people. So I'm strongly encouraging other people that want to step forward. Please feel free to do so. Second, we are always working on the newsletter. It's very important when you get a request to do something for the newsletter that you take it seriously. If you can't do it, let us know, but we really need people to be contributing articles when we ask for them. We need the other committees to be contributing reports. A lot of people do actually read the newsletter. So it's very, very, very important. Another thing that we are doing is we are working on a one-year comprehensive plan. It's funny to read it on the agenda that the executive board has decided we would like to have a strategic vision. The Economic Development Committee has one of these plans, and soon the Communications Committee will as well. We are also working on methods to make staff's lives easier. There's only 2 of them, plus the interns, and that's a lot of social media work that we ask our staff to do. And we need to be very conscious about what we ask our staff to do, and if the committees can. Our committee is going to try very hard to help staff and make it easier for them to conduct our electronic communications and things through the website and social media. That is what I have for you at this point. I welcome any and all questions, and thank you all for being here and listening to my report.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there questions? Yes. Commissioner Maroon.
Maroon, you know. I mean, unless you were looking at someone else.
No.
Commissioner Robinson, can you please remind me, and my sincere apologies for forgetting, how often is this newsletter circulated?
We do it on a quarterly basis, if memory serves.
Okay.
So it shouldn't be too much of an issue to write an article for us. I will help you while I'm the chair if you need any kind of assistance. But we're really trying to make sure that we get it out in circulation on a stable quarterly basis.
Is it like the beginning of the traditional quarters, like April, June?
I'm so sorry, you froze. I didn't catch that, Commissioner Maroon.
Which months? Are they the starts of the traditional quarters, like April and June and January?
If memory serves, I believe we do it towards the end. I can get that information for you. You will have to forgive me. I'm running on less than 2 hours of sleep.
It's okay. If I have a better understanding of when they come out, I can do a better job of providing material.
I will touch base with you privately and provide you a very exact set of timetables, and any other commissioner that would like them is welcome to an exact set of timetables. And before I end my speaking time, I'm also on the Economic Development Committee, and I really do want to give Matt Landers a shout out. He works his butt off. He's kept us on program and kept us on task with completing our one-year plan, and he has just been a godsend. Thank you for everything you do, Matt, and I would be remiss if I didn't say that to your face in a public meeting.
Thank you, commissioners. Our next committee for a report, if indeed you have one, is the Children, Youth, and Families Committee.
Thank you, co-chair. I would like to say we did not meet all that often over the summer due to people's schedules. However, individual committee members did a lot of work to advance the mission of the committee, including having a conversation between a school principal and a superintendent in the public school system in Walla Walla around some inappropriate and out of compliance with state law, lack of support toward a transgender student in a middle school. There were some folks in our Child Protective Youth Services who work for the state who did some extra on their own time trainings of people in their networks to help them be more LGBTQ informed in terms of trying to help individuals, minors in their family systems. So I'm really grateful to them for that work. I agree with Commissioner Robinson's statement that it's time as we get into 2021 to elect a new set of chairs or co-chairs to our committee. Currently, there are co-chairs in our committee, and it's time for me to hand the gavel to somebody else, maybe, who can also do an excellent job of running this committee. But I am continued to be pleased with the amount of outside participation that we've been getting, and I hope that that will continue. Happy to entertain any questions. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Maroon. Thank you so much. All right. Next up is Health and Wellness, if we have a report.
Hello again, Commissioners Sawyer and then our departed Commissioner Maeve Griffith were members along with me on this committee, and I don't see Commissioner Sawyer here today. We also have met and maybe not made quorum every single time over the course of the summer due to people's schedules. However, Commissioner Sawyer and I have been very involved in Manny's HIV medication work group, along with the state stakeholders from Healthcare Authority and from DOH. I would like to take one moment to just pause to mourn the passing of Lauren Fanning, who was a longtime HIV advocate and one of the stakeholders on this work group and associated work groups who has really championed medication equity and health equity for people living with HIV and AIDS for many years. She passed away from cancer earlier this week, and it's a big loss for people in Washington State who, she was, unlike me, very soft-spoken. And so when she said something, people really paid attention, unlike me, when I just bloviate for a long time. So I'm really going to miss Lauren and, thank her for her many decades of service. I do have big concerns about the HIV medication issue. And I'm trusting in this process that we're going to work them out, and that people will have some open minds going forward. Right now, we're kind of still working through, why the state has the position that it has with regard to this Medicaid rescheduling and classification of some HIV antiretrovirals. We have to hear from a lot more people, and Manny has wisely set up some future town halls, and I'm doing my best to get rural representation at those town halls, because I know from many, many previous legislation days or advocacy days in Olympia that they just don't hear from people in Eastern Washington very often on this issue. Yes, Commissioner Archer, I see your hand.
Thanks. Two things. One is I want to quickly clarify that our former Commissioner Maeve Griffith has departed from the commission, not from the world.
Right. Thank
because
you.
I found myself just checking Facebook like, oh no, did she die?
Oh no. I'm
but
very
she
sorry.
posted 4 hours ago.
Yeah.
And
great.
I also...
She's doing very well. Yeah.
I also wanted to ask, if more for the sake of people who might be watching this than for myself, if you'd be down to sort of summarize what on earth is going on with the way they're treating HIV medications.
Really quick 25 word response. Let's see, Manny. Let's see how I do. Medicaid is the health provider. Healthcare Authority is the agency that manages our state block grant for Medicaid. It also manages sets up the system for state employees. It has many different kinds of drugs on different schedules, so they're across a whole continuum of diagnoses and chronic health conditions. And it has stayed away for the past 17 years or so on scheduling or restricting any HIV-related medication until this last year, when it was recommended that it put some of the most expensive medications, like Biktarvy, which can run more than $15,000 a month, onto a schedule that means like you have to fail another kind of medication first before you can be eligible. And it also put several HIV medications on what we call a prior authorization. So you can't just like walk into the pharmacy and go and pick up your med. If it's the first time you've ever done that, you have to go through a process with insurance. When we're talking about people with HIV, we're talking about many vulnerable people. We've got roughly 14,000 folks in the state living with HIV/AIDS, and many of them live at or below the poverty line. They may be unstably housed. And if they go to a different pharmacy every month because they were demeaned at one pharmacy, they have to face that PA every single month in a way that they did not used to. There are also some medications that, it's just going to be harder for them to get than if they have private insurance. And so HIV advocates are really asking for the state to revisit whether this needs to be a restriction that they put in, given the gravity of what living with HIV can mean for people, and that, without medication, they really can't manage any of their health because it attacks the immune system. So there are budgetary issues, there are ethical issues, there are equity issues, there are, other kinds of questions about whether this is really the way to go forward. And we've got lots of different people with lots of different viewpoints, and Manny is really good at herding cats, and I hope that he puts that on his resume. Manny, if you think I misstated, please clarify for me.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Maroon. I think that you summarized very well a very complex issue because there are many layers to the issue that we're looking at. I also want to recognize that not only the work that Commissioners Maroon and Sawyer are doing in that work group, because they are representing the Commission because of their expertise. So it's not just because they work on this field, they are the official representation of the Commission in this work group. And also Representative Macri, who has been at the meetings, and when she can't, her staff is at the meeting. So we have good representation from the Commission and the interests of this particular group on that work group. And as I said, everybody can access the information, so you can follow up, because it's very complex. And at the same time, we have seen some movement with very concrete recommendations on what needs to start happening to change the way in which we provide access to these medications for certain sections of the population. Sometimes it doesn't look like it, but Commissioner Maroon, we just read the summary of the preliminary recommendations that were sent yesterday, and we did actually a lot of good work. So that's sometimes if you attend the meetings, it can feel like we're not moving, but when we collect all the notes and all the thoughts and all the ideas, it does show some progress. So that's good.
Well, that is the extent of my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Maroon. Thank you. And Annie, thank you as well. Good comments. That's what keeps our conversation up to date. Let's see. Next is our BIPOC committee for a report.
No report.
Thank you. And finally, the Vulnerable Communities Committee.
Great, thank you. I have a couple of things to update. We've been looking into action around 3 different populations: intersex people, sex workers, and people who are incarcerated. When it comes to the intersex community, we've been asked to try to find or create some kind of data specific to Washington State that can be used for drafting legislation, because there currently, as far as we can tell, is none, and it doesn't seem to be something that the state collects data on. So we've reached out to Seattle Children's Hospital to start a discussion about what they are doing with intersex births and infants, and how they might have some information about how many births they're dealing with, and just kind of use that as the beginning to talk about other things that we might try to collect information on. Potentially just doing a survey and qualitative data as well would be helpful. For the issue of sex work and sex work decriminalization, we've been receiving updates about work from the Oregon Human Rights Commission. They recently held a large town hall, or I think it was a town hall, yeah, where they had a lot of input from sex workers talking about the impacts of criminalization, and it's kind of become the grounding place for a lot of movement in Oregon. And so we're exploring options that we have to move forward in Washington as well. I've been talking with Manny about some of the kinds of things that the committee can do, and we're going to get more in depth in that at our next meeting next week. For people who are incarcerated, Manny already talked a little bit about some of the work happening with the Department of Corrections. And then I've also been given the opportunity to review and update the trans policy for the Olympia Municipal Jail. And so that's some of the pieces that we've been working on. I do also want to make a note about membership. We've gained some community members. We've lost some community members. We gained some more community members. We continue to, well, there are some consistent people who are showing up every time, but we continue to have a struggle with attendance. And I know that Commissioner Goldson has had a series of personal and health issues and has had to miss the majority of meetings this year. And so that's often left myself as the only commissioner in the committee. And there's even been once or twice I've been the only person, the only committee member in the committee. And so with that, I do want to also put out an ask to other commissioners as we're talking about setting up different chairs, and maybe that might include some movement of membership. If anyone would like to join the Vulnerable Communities Commission or is interested in that, I would love that. And also, if you have any community members you would like to recommend to join, please get in touch with me.
Thank you, Commissioner Omar. Are there any questions or? Yeah. All right. Yes, Commissioner Robinson.
When are your meetings typically, Commissioner Hillmeyer?
Okay, right now we are having our meetings on the 4th Wednesday at 4 p.m. That was actually set for people who aren't actually making those meetings. So it's possible that we could reset it to another time.
We'll be in touch with you privately.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you, commissioners. That is the end of our reports. And I'll just make a note from the executive committee. Please feel free, we've said this before, but it's always true, that if at any time you want to send in some ideas about committees or restructuring or thinking different ways about committees, please send them to the executive committee so that we can start the conversation there. All right, the next thing in our meeting today is an opportunity for the advisors who are present, the legislative advisors, to have a word. I think it is only Senator Wilson who is with us. If I am wrong, please speak up. And Senator, we'd like to offer you a few minutes to bring us up to speed.
Thank you so much. And I'm happy to be here, and welcome Commissioner Best. OMAC is now represented, and you've got some youth over there that I've been in conversation with. So I'm really pleased to have you join this group. And I just want to thank everyone else for all the work they've been doing, because I know aside from the commission, you have this thing called another life. And you too have been impacted by the pandemic, not only in your professional world, but also your personal lives. So I just want to thank you for being here today and just continuing the work that has been happening throughout the interim. I want to say, obviously, eviction moratorium is top of mind for me, and thinking about what's happening and what's coming to an end. So hear from constituents every day and thinking about how, again, our disproportionate impacts on our communities, again, will be faced with kind of how they're dealing with that. So every day, I think it's an issue, and continue to focus on those that seem to be impacted more than others. And that's many of the members of our population here. And so that is a daily piece of work since during the session and since the session has happened. But I thought I'd share a little bit about what's going on. And I just got off another Zoom before I jumped on this one. And I'm part of the Behavioral Health Subcommittee. And it's really looking at the full system of support perinatally all the way through 25. And so I sit on that committee. And one of the things and one of the lenses I will continue to have is making sure we're thinking about our youth and our LGBTQ scholars and what we're doing to support their behavioral health needs and their need to be their full selves as they walk into whatever setting they might be in. And we know when we look at suicide, we look at self-harm, we look at issues around homelessness and families and family systems, they are impacted. And when you add the pandemic on top of that, that is something that's incredibly important to me. I will also say I've been meeting with a group of non-binary scholars who have recently graduated, and they have a very deep interest in making sure that we're continuing to work on issues around gender expression and the issues and challenges they had in their school experiences that could be changed through education or could be changed through legislation. And I hope as we continue our work as a commission that we figure out a way to harness those youth voices, whether it's Roots of Our Youth, whatever it is, but there are many young people out there who identify and are looking for a place and a space to be supported. And it would be something maybe we could talk about is how we make some connections. They are working, I believe, on a piece of legislation, but some of this is just already in rule. And so it's a matter of making sure people are doing what they need to be doing. The other thing I wanted to share is, there was conversation around Department of Corrections, which I'm happy to hear about. I sit on Human Services, Reentry and Rehab, and that is a big bucket of work for me as we think about not only what's happening with with individuals who are incarcerated or in facilities, but also as we think about reentry with our changes in our laws and the changes in things around decriminalization and what that means for people coming out of our systems, and how unless we provide services and supports that are needed, individuals are going to end up right back where they were. So a lot of work around reentry services, not only for the adult populations, but also for young people as well. And I will say we have a new secretary for the Department of Corrections, Secretary Strange, and she and I go way back, and that's just where I'll go. And I've been having a lot of conversation with her, working on solitary confinement. I did it for juveniles, and this session will begin the work to do that in the adult population, but also have been really happy that she's created a new women's prison division within Department of Corrections, as well as really looking, focusing on gender responsivity and trauma-informed care, and really looking at our treatment and our housing of trans individuals, and particularly trans women, and also, again, a non-binary population, and how we're working with our staffs, but also how we're providing places and spaces, because medical solitary or solitary also is not a place to put someone when you don't know what else to do with them. And I will say that in quotes. The other thing really important that is the implementation of the comprehensive sexuality health education legislation that came into being, and have spent this last interim OSPI working on things related especially around affirmative consent, and making sure that the curriculums are vetted, and now becomes the beginning, excuse me, of the implementation in our 295 school districts, first those that are doing it, and next year, all school districts, and making sure that issues around our protected class scholars are addressed and addressed in the curricula and in the work that's done. It's not about doing a piece of the legislation, it's about doing all of the legislation. So you'll see some, excuse me, communication coming out from OSPI to lift that piece up and make sure people understand what protected class is and who protected class is, and what that means for moving forward as we introduce this into our schools K-12. Then the last thing I just would say is I'm loving the conversation. I've had an opportunity to have conversation and now meet with survival sex workers in my area, and also have had quite a bit of conversation just around the whole issue around sex work and decriminalization. And when we think about homelessness in my community, that's what kind of brought up this conversation, and what about whole services and whole supports. and also a concern around sex trafficking and that kind of fine balance between how one defines that. And sometimes I think it's age, but sometimes I think it's other things. And so all of those three things are pieces of work and new learning that I've been having in conversations I've been having throughout this interim. And then the only other thing I would say is, and especially ever as we think about things happening across our state with young people, I want to make sure people are aware of the Office of Education Ombuds, and that sits outside of OSPI, and it is a place and a space where an individual or an adult can call and really get support that's a third-party support that allows that privacy to be maintained. And I just want to make sure people know that that's a resource, and I can put a link in the chat just to make sure of that. And with that, I'll stop. If anyone's got questions, I would be happy to take them. But again, thank you so much for everything you do, and happy to be here with you all today.
You're muted, Marcia.
Yes. Thank you, Senator. Thank you so very much. All right. No questions? Okay.
Marcia, I see two hands
I see
up.
some hands up. Yeah.
Yes, we do. All right. Commissioner Robinson, please.
Actually, KB had their hand up first. I think it would be more appropriate for KB to go first.
Thanks for
Thank
pointing
you.
it out. Sometimes hard to see all the things. Commissioner Kelly Brago, please go ahead.
Senator Wilson, I just wanted to share during one of a committee meeting, I don't know, I joined a few and I forgot which one it was, but I was introduced to senior ombuds, Danielle, and I had her join Oasis's community action committee, and this has inspired a passion Oasis youth did not know they had, and we are now about to meet with OSPI with a senior ombuds on Tuesday to talk about why we're not listening to LGBTQ youth's personal experience with comprehensive sex ed being taught in the schools. And it's through the work of the commission that was brought possible. And now 12 and 13-year-olds of Pierce County is about to join the conversation and demand that they be heard.
Well, Commissioner KB, that just makes my heart so warm. And I got to tell you, I started my work with 11 to 21-year-old pregnant and parenting teens in Tacoma. So they were alive and well then, and they're still alive and well and using their voices. Anything that I can do to help support, please let me know. If there are changes or revisions in legislation, or anything that that group of young people would love to meet about, to talk more after your meeting, would be happy to do that, because that's where legislation comes. It doesn't come from inside, it comes from outside. I have a group that's also working on a piece of legislation creating mental health days for young people, just like we would have sick leave or vacation days in work. And so a lot of, solutions come from within. So thank you so much for sharing that. And OEO has been around, and you'll see some legislation coming out this short session to lift them up even more. So I'm so glad you all know that as a resource.
Commissioner Robinson, did you have a question?
I actually have two, if the senator would not mind indulging me. The first is what resources or discussion has there been about improving access to resources for LGBTQ people who are incarcerated in prisons existing in rural communities, and what movement has been made to respect the diversity of family structures so that if you have multi-person relationships where one partner is incarcerated, the other partners are able to visit? Is there moves being made to equalize the respect given to those relationships in that situation and to those families so that they have equal visitation as would a two-person coupling?
So like in conjugal visits or just visits where you potentially have the opportunity to touch a partner, is that what you're talking about as far as just, or just anything that has to do with
I deliberately left it vague because I
Okay,
felt as though
okay.
focusing on conjugal visits was actually feeding into
Yeah.
a stereotype about
No, totally. But I guess I'm just, and I guess what I would say is my focus has been two things. One has just been how we're housing and treating individuals inside our prisons, and especially as we think about individuals who identify or identify as trans and then are put in a situation where they can't be anything, they can't be who they are, but they can't be who they're not either. I don't know if that makes sense. I think right now, as we look at the pandemic, I haven't even been looking at who's visiting. I know that people have been unable to visit. And I also know it's not even just the face-to-face visits, but using JPEG and using the systems has been difficult. So what I would love to do is a little bit more exploring about that, Commissioner Robinson, and then report back. Because that's not been an area I've looked at, but would love to kind of explore that a little further and be able to share back. And if there are things that you know about that you can share with me, because stories always kind of help, please do share with me, and would love to work with that.
That is not my story to tell. I think it would be great, though, if we could create space for families that find themselves in that situation to communicate with our elected officials in a judgment-free environment.
Totally. And I will say I sit on and I do visit the Statewide Policy Council, which is representative of families of incarcerated, and they very much do. They represent the diversity of the individuals you find inside. And I also have been working with other stakeholder groups. So usually they come to me because they've got someone on the inside that's incarcerated, not because of the who. So if that makes sense. So I will also explore with the groups I'm currently connected with, how many of them are in relationships where they're perhaps are not able to be their full selves, as you're explaining. So you've got my head spinning now. I have to explore more.
Thank you.
Hi, Senator Wilson, this is Commissioner Figueroa. Can I just have you repeat what organization you visit with about that? I'm taking minutes and I missed that.
It's called the Office of Education Ombuds, OEO. And it sits in the governor's office. So it's outside of the K-12 system. And so when oftentimes, families have issues, they're very reticent to go into the system and complain, because oftentimes there's fear of retribution or fear their child will be adversely impacted by their advocacy. And so this is a way where a family or an individual can come to a third party and they can be the entree into the district to do a little bit of exploration, and then can help a family navigate their way through a system. And oftentimes it has to do with issues related to identity. It has related oftentimes special ed issues related to behavior, all kinds of things where families aren't sure how to navigate in the K-12 district that they're in.
Thank you. I just missed it, so thank you for that.
Thank you. All right, we are at a point where we normally take a break of 10 minutes. However, we are a little behind in our work today. That's okay, because the conversations were absolutely necessary. So we don't let that get in our way. But at this point, I would suggest a 5-minute break, or
Madam Co-Chair, I see that Commissioner Kelly Barroga has their hand up. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, this is absolutely okay. It's not showing on my screen. Please, sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Barroga.
Thank you. I was wondering if Senator Wilson and I guess the entire commission could help me on one thing that I found from OEO. Upon meeting with them, it was pointed out to me that LGBTQ youth are not included in their strategic plan. I have made it a mission for this year to actually have the words LGBTQ youth somewhere on their strategic plan. This was a barrier for our youth to even reach out. And according to the senior ombuds that I was in contact with, this is something they've been, that she has personally tried to address. But of course, with a small agency, this was not something that was, I don't know, maybe not a priority. But I was wondering with our newfound partnership, that at the bare minimum, we can push a little harder for them to consider adding LGBTQ youth as a priority, as you know.
Can I respond quickly? Because two things. One is Commissioner KB, there's agency request that comes, and then there's legislation that comes from the outside. And last year I ran a bill called OEO visibility because it was important to be, especially during the pandemic, that families knew there was somebody that would answer their phone. And so when it comes from the outside, the agency can't really add anything to it. They can't really do anything other than say, thank you so much, this is great. This session, what I'm understanding is there will be an agency request coming from OEO, which I've been in conversation with Carrie Bassis, who is their executive director on, and my hope is that we can marry the visibility bill that I did with whatever might be coming out as an agency request. So what I would ask you to do is, can you follow up with me? Because we could just add that little piece, right, to whatever bill comes out, because that's been my work as well, to make sure that young people see themselves represented and able to advocate in any space or any place where we're doing work with them, for them, or to them. So if you could follow up with me, I'd love to make sure that we put that into whatever legislation comes out.
I'm definitely giggling.
To expand on that, KB, I also have a good relationship with Carrie at the Ombuds office, and we've been working a lot on how to include the voice of LGBTQ folk, and they have been really responsive to the issues that we have identified that come through our office and immediately respond to them. So I know that Commissioner Maroon mentioned one on the chat, which is not of public, the public cannot see on our live streaming, but Commissioner Maroon mentioned a situation in Walla Walla where the Office of the Ombuds, of the Education Ombuds, has been involved thanks to this connection through the commission. But there's also another situation outside of Spokane, in the Spokane Valley district, where they have also been involved, and it came through the LGBTQ Commission's office thanks to Commissioner Archer and some contacts there. So they are really, trying to make their best to make sure that the needs of the LGBTQ community and the LGBTQ students are at the forefront of their work. And we will continue those conversations and encourage groups like Oasis and others to advocate with the voice of the youth and students to keep them, accountable for the work.
I appreciate that. And I'm giggly because if I was standing up, I would be jumping up and down, because I choose to believe that I am the catalyst of all of this, because way back then, I brought this up. And so that also sparked into an LGBTQ competency training for their agency that our youth actually provided. So it's come full circle for me. So it's exactly why we do these things. So yes, I'm very excited. I will follow up with you all after.
They have only good things to say about Oasis and that training.
Well, thank you, Commissioner KB, and thank you, Senator. And yes, of course, this is what we're here for. All right. I don't see anyone else. And as to our break, I was going to suggest about 5 minutes, unless we have a desire to just push forward. Is there? No, I don't think so. Just needing to offer that. So we'll take a 5-minute break and return to our work, which will be new business, a report, and a breakout. Thank you. 5 minutes.
Senator Wilson, I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for answering my questions. It's been on my mind for a while, and you're amazing.
Well, Jeffrey, I don't think I really answered, but I certainly, it's an interesting thing. There's so many layers to this onion. So happy to follow up and really, as I dig further. I did have a presentation on all of the things, all women's programs and such, just trying to unpack some things and trying to figure out. So it is clearly a question, and it happens both at the men's facilities as well as women's facilities. So anyway, I appreciate the inquiry.
Well, again, thank you so much.
All right,
Fine.
we're coming back together now. Just wait till everyone's excellent. Very good. All right. Our work now takes us to new business. And the first thing under new business that we have is just checking in on an ongoing report about recommendations, Ad Hoc Process Committee work. Is there a report?
Commissioner Maroon is getting ready for that. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, we just got approval from the state today to start administering COVID vaccines to our syringe participants and people in our that are on our like our beat homeless residents, houseless residents. So I was talking to public health, so super excited about that. We're going to be doing some mobile drug user street health work out here in Southeast Washington. Super excited about that as well. Okay. Okay, well, you want me to talk about the Ad Hoc Process Committee, don't you?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Could I possibly get a screen sharing authority? Or Manny, I sent the document, the draft to you and Omar early this morning. I don't know if you can put that up for people to look at. Okay. Commissioners Robinson and Landers and KB and I, Kelly Baraga and I met earlier in the summer and talked about, what we'd like to see maybe as a different process for election for our own commission. And we had a great conversation, and I took forever and a day to write up our notes and the process that we sketched out in that meeting. So this represents a draft. We do want, I'm not expecting a vote on this today because you're all just looking at it for the first time, but I think it would be great if folks would, I'm happy to circulate this or ask our staff to put this on the Google Drive and to take feedback and comments from everyone. There is a comment in here in the background section where I say that we were out of compliance with our bylaws, and my God, I wrote down the bylaws that we broke. And I got to just track them down and I'll put them in there. When we did our last election, we were out of compliance. And so we want to make sure that we have a fair process going forward and that everyone knows what the expectations are. And, it was our belief as a committee that one of the reasons why we're such a large commission was because we are such an incredibly diverse community across all of those letters, however many letters we put in our brick of letters of our coalition. We want to see that diversity reflected not just in the body of our commission, but also in the ways in which we function, the ways in which we elect chairs, the ways in which we define these committees that we're all serving on. Otherwise, we're not really fulfilling what the legislature intended as a commission. So what we're suggesting here is piggybacks on what we did in our inaugural meeting, where we wanted not just a chair of this commission, but a co-chair system so that there would be two people in concert with each other to split duties and labor and also increase diversity and inclusion at the very top of our elected leadership. So that first year, we had one-year term for one co-chair and one 2-year term for the other co-chair, so that in future years, the co-chair duties would be staggered. So this basically, kind of solidifies that the election for each co-chair are in alternate years, one in the even year for 2 years and one in the odd year for 2 years. We're hoping that that helps with, mentoring and institutional memory, and also, that inclusion piece that I talked about. I didn't write into this plan that you can't serve more than one term, but the expectation is that you're going to work to help another commissioner move into the seat that you're holding if you are a current co-chair. So that's something for all of you to think about. We wrote up that vice chair, secretary, and treasurer, which are the positions that constitute the rest of the executive committee, that those serve one-year terms. So we all agreed to that at the inaugural meeting as well. I think it's fine to have no term limits for these positions, but that is something that commissioners should think about. And then, we don't need to say anything more about terms because they are already defined in our bylaws. As well, the duties of the executive committee members were already articulated at our inaugural meeting. So then for election, we thought as an ad hoc committee that it should not be on the backs of the executive committee members to run the next election, but that so that people could talk to another commissioner who was not a current executive committee member about their own willingness and interest in running for the executive committee at the next election, that they would ask for an election chair, someone to stand to be a temporary, position, just to help figure out who was going to run for which positions. So there's some timing stuff in here about, giving us all enough time to be able to know who's running and to ask people to write a short statement, not a, Chekhov novel or anything, but maybe half a sheet of a page or to a page of why are you running, what is your interest in each particular office. And that would be for every office, not just co-chair. So, we would hold those conversations between that election chair and the rest of us commissioners as confidential between the two of them, so that they can, ask any questions that they want. Those aren't going to be reported out anywhere. Then everyone will get those statements at least a week before the election, the meeting that we're going to have in which there's an election. So that everyone feels informed about who's running and why, and can, kind of sit with that. And I didn't want to prevent anyone from nominating on the day of the election or self-nominating on the day of the election. But I did want to say that, that's not necessarily a recommended practice. We'd like to see people step up beforehand and make sure that we're communicating as well as possible about what that next slate of candidates look like. And then, well, I shouldn't use the word slate, because I say in the next thing here that like slates saying we're just going to vote in this entire group of people are strongly discouraged. So if everyone would please consider that they're running independently of each other, that leads to more inclusive processes. So that's basically what we created and how our conversation went. But I think it's fair for everyone to ask questions and be able to make comments on this before we move it forward.
I have a question / recommendation for the committee, just for a procedural thing because of the timing and all that. But would it be possible for the ad hoc and for you as a representative of the committee to, since we don't have the time today to discuss all this and you want to give enough time, and the committee, the executive committee wants to summon or call for a meeting in October, perhaps the recommendation from the committee is to put this out here to share with all the commissioners and to be ready for vote on the next meeting in October, so we can use the process in November when the elections are supposed to happen. Would that make sense for the committee, and would that be a good proposal from the committee? So we don't.
Yes, and again, my apologies for not getting this to people sooner. That would be a great proposal. Would anyone like to make that motion?
Yeah, because I can't. It has to come from some of you.
Coach,
So moved.
sorry, I was going to do that. I'll second Commissioner Archer's motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
And for the minutes, the motion is that this proposal be reviewed by the whole commission, and all questions will be addressed at the next meeting, and the adoption of the proposal will be taking the next meeting. So we have a month for the process to be in place.
Yes.
Thank you. So we have motion and second. Any further discussion?
Not so much discussion, but just wanted to thank Commissioner Maroon and the other members of this ad hoc committee for putting the work into making this happen.
Thank you.
I do have one comment before we approve the document. I just want to amend that. I think the document, thank you, Commissioner Maroon and everyone else that helped. Just verbiage in there. I noticed in the front page we had one of the officer positions was treasurer. We don't have a treasurer, so before we approve, I just want to make sure we make that correction, and then I think I'm happy with the document. Thank you.
Great. Chop it out.
Commissioner Archer, you have your hand raised.
Going just went dark for a second. Yeah, my understanding though was current vote, we're not actually approving the document, approving a process to review it, and we're going to be voting on it in October, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
And so,
I just wanted to clarify.
Our secretary can then suggest that we strike the word treasurer.
Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Robinson, I think I see you. Yes.
I would like to request a point of clarification on parliamentary procedure. At the start of the presentation on this topic, Subcommittee Chair Maroon pointed out that we broke numerous parts of our bylaws in the last leadership election. If that is the case, and if we were to approve this, would that then mean that we would have to hold a completely new set of leadership elections? Would the fact that we broke the bylaws invalidate the previous elections? Number one. Number two, even if by some miracle that didn't violate the last round of elections, would approving this document, much like approving a county level redistricting plan, then mean that all of the executive officers have to officially rerun for their positions and we have to hold new elections?
I was really hoping you weren't going to bring that up, Jeffrey.
I'm a parliamentarian and I can answer the question, but I don't think that I should be the one to answer it. I think the executive director, who is also a parliamentarian, or anyone else who's qualified, should put their foot in and answer it, because I don't want to be the only one who's about to answer that.
Well, how about this, Commissioner Robinson? How about
that would be a question for our Attorney General, because she's the one that interprets our bylaws and our processes based on the larger RCWs that rule the work of commissions and task forces. So does that make sense?
Well,
because yes, we do have our internal processes and documents, and they don't trump whatever is, the RCWs that lead, right, or not that lead, that define the work of the commission. So Commissioner Robinson, if you can write the question as you want it to be addressed, so I can send it to the AA without any interpretation, so they can give us their interpretation. Yeah.
Why don't I update the document with the bylaws that I think were offended, and then that could be something that you send on.
The two things can happen at the same time, because one is for internal procedures, and the other one is that we want to have clarification from our Attorney General on the process itself. Yeah.
This is why I directed that question to you, Executive Director, because holy crap.
Sometimes the rules that rule all of the boards and commissions are slightly different than what we are used to in a different setting. So yeah, I wouldn't know. Right now, I wouldn't know what the answer to that question is.
All right, thank you. We do have a motion on the floor. Any other direct discussion to the motion? All right, if we could have a roll call from staff, please, for a vote.
All right, Commissioner Landers.
Aye.
Commissioner Maroon.
Aye.
Commissioner Robinson.
Aye.
Commissioner Archer.
Aye.
Commissioner KB.
Aye.
Commissioner Figueroa.
Aye.
Commissioner Erickson.
Aye.
Commissioner Hillmeyer.
Aye.
Commissioner Botzer.
Aye.
Commissioner Best.
Aye.
Mhm. Thank you. The motion passes. All right. Our agenda, which we had prepared, now has us having a short discussion on strategic vision, but I want to draw our attention also to the time. We had proposed a set of breakouts where we would have further discussion. And if we're going to do that and meet our hard stop time of 12:30, we need to hold that in mind. So let's see. I think Executive Director Manny, could you begin the discussion or let us know a little bit about the strategic discussion and the document that we have all received and perhaps read that will help us in that process?
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. The commission, when we started, we had to start right away. We started as a commission with the commissioners when legislative processes were already in place. So we had to plug in immediately. We didn't have the time to think strategically about what the commission wanted to do as an institution, as an agency, to have some clarity on how we wanted to structure the work besides, the basics that we needed at the time, which were, the legal documents that we needed, the committees, structure, and that sort of things, and immediately find a few important issues for the community that we wanted to focus on. Now that we are established, now that we have grown, now that we are integrated into the systems of policymaking and advisory roles and all that, it is time for us to sit down, to think strategically, and to dream big, and to have a strategy on how to achieve that vision and that mission and that dream that we might come up with as a state agency and as representatives of our community. So there are obviously different ways of going about strategic planning, and we will settle on, the executive committee will settle on a process that they understand is best to follow. While we do that, we wanted to start the conversation and start gathering some of the ideas and some of the dreams of the commissioners as representatives of our community, right? So the exercise that we're doing today is the beginning of a larger conversation, a broader conversation that is going to continue next month, where we are going to sit down for more strategic planning and more an actual strategic plan meeting, right, where we will get some goals, some ways of achieving those goals and whatnot. One idea that I had and one suggestion that I have on how to approach this work today, not the work in October, just the work today, is to use a system that is called, or a framework that is called Appreciative Inquiry. And through that process, it's not ignoring the flaws, is highlighting the successes and the good things, so we can focus on that and put our efforts there, and then based on that, look at what is not working and decide this shouldn't be part of our work because it's never worked, or this is a positive way of addressing that flaw, that lack of whatever it is, right? So keep that in mind, because oftentimes people think that appreciative inquiry, by focusing on the good, forgets about the bad, and it's not that. Is by having excitement about what works, we can then have a different mindset when dealing with what doesn't work. So that's the mindset, and that's some of the documents that I sent you about appreciative inquiry and the process. We want to focus on the good today, while at the same time recognizing that there are challenges. There are 3 questions that the executive committee wanted us to think about. Excuse me. Omar, it seems like you are having trouble. Okay, there, thank you. There was some delay on showing. There are 3 questions that the executive committee thought it would be good for us to think about and to discuss, and that includes the stakeholders who are in the meeting. So what we are going to do right now is to divide the group into three breakout sessions, where people will have a little bit more time, that we're breaking you into sessions so you have more time to share your thoughts and your ideas. Because if we have everybody, you know, on the same breakout room, it's going to be more difficult for some people to share their ideas. So we want to break the session for commissioners, and each one of the members of the executive committee who are here, so Commissioner Figueroa, Commissioner Butzer, and Commissioner Archer, will be facilitating the discussion. All the breakout sessions are going to discuss all 3 questions, and then the members of the executive committee who are facilitating that conversation are going to be taking copious notes. When we come back together, we can say a short summary about what we have learned so far. But remember that this is the beginning of the conversation, and that we're going to take the whole next meeting, with the exception of the vote on the ad hoc recommendations. But the next meeting in October is going to focus on expanding on this work and actually come up with, you know, measurable goals in our strategic vision. So does that make sense to our commissioners? Is that clear? What is the work that we want to do today? Is there any questions for clarification on this process today? And I don't see the images. So if you have any questions, just unmute yourself, because I cannot see who has their hands raised right now or anything.
I'll just chime in real quick. I
Yes.
took a screenshot of the screen to make sure that I had these questions, but I wonder if these questions were going to also make it into the breakout room with us.
I don't know if that's possible, Omar. I'm really bad with technology, sorry.
Thank you. And I was going to mention that you did receive this through the email. And so I would just encourage folks to open them up in your emails through the document on there, because it won't follow you into the breakout room.
Okay.
Thanks, Omar. And the document he's talking about is the agenda. So we have 4, I think. The agenda has it at the bottom.
And as a process question here, since we are running a little late, I'm just looking at the clock and thinking of the time. We had originally thought something like 40 minutes. I believe we're going to, at this point, probably need 25 to 30 max. In fact, has anyone come forward to speak to us? No? All right. Well, let's do 25. And so we'll come back, and if staff would please watch that and bring us back into full meeting at that time. Let's do it.
Yes. Okay, Omar, you can set the breakout sessions with Archer, Butzer, and Figueroa as the leads of each one of those 3 sessions, 3 breakout sessions.
Thank you. And you will be automatically switched over to your breakout rooms. And after I open the breakout rooms, you will have 25 minutes within your rooms, and then we will automatically come back as a group. So here we go. And then Manny, because you are the host, I can't actually move you, so you'll have to move yourself.